Thank you everyone for joining. Today we're going to talk about one copy to rule them all, how you can achieve data resilience without making copies everywhere. Today you have myself, Bob Hart. I'm a senior solution architect from Panzura, and on here with me I also have Carl. Carl, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Hey, everybody. Carl Rautenstrauch. I'm a program manager with the Azure storage team and spend a lot of time working with our good friends at Panzura.
So we'll jump right into it. If you have any questions, please let us know. Just throw them in the chat and we'll address them. We'll get right into it. So when it comes to data, a lot can go wrong, right? Well, what can go wrong? Well, look, let's be real for a minute. Whether it's due to hardware failure, undocumented software features, people moving file, or versioning sprawl, data is vulnerable. Data gets corrupted, data gets lost. Sometimes data is maliciously targeted, right? And data has to be protected. Threats are everywhere, right? Gone are the days when we only had to worry about natural threats, but natural threats are real, whether it's, tornadoes or flooding or that awful meteor that always seems to be hitting data centers. And the old adage was, well, if a meteor hits New York, London's probably okay, right? Unfortunately, though, threats have changed. So now threats are moving away from what could have been a natural disaster, something that accidentally destroyed maybe a copy of data, to one that's become very targeted. Right, people are looking to take advantage of a misstep, take advantage of a poorly written code in order to actively destroy that data and to disable the protections that you had in place. And because of that, further steps need to be taken. Unfortunately, here we have some terrible statistics. Ransomware is responsible for a large percentage of failing businesses, unfortunately, and a large cost. Carl, I don't know if this is something you're seeing on the Azure side. This is something we're seeing a lot on the Panzura side, is a large focus around ransomware.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's amazing. Normally, like as an end user and early on in my career as a vendor, I would look at a slide like this and say, oh, this is the marketing guys and their traditional FUD to get people to do something, right? Do something and do something different. But it's been amazing. Two of my good friends here in the Southeast, I'm based in Florida, where those hurricanes are always a risk. Fortunately, no meteors, but hurricanes for sure. Two of my friends in the Southeast were involved in a year-long effort to help a large city government agency recover from a ransomware attack. I personally was pulled into an engagement with a customer who was relying on what they thought was a safe data protection and data recovery schema that they had set up. And unfortunately, due to these increasingly sophisticated ransomware attacks, the ransomware found their connection to the copy of their data that they were sending to the cloud and encrypted that data set as well. So this poor customer was really in dire straits and ultimately lost a significant amount of their file data to that ransomware. So I've seen it personally through both friends and myself, and it's just amazing what's happened. I mean, this is a true crime that we're seeing today.
Yeah, as far as anecdotes go, I've seen some pretty extensive ones as well. I find that the worst ones are the ones that do like a slow crawl. They'll get legitimate AD access through someone working remotely, someone with lax security enforcement, and now it has legitimate AD access to kind of do a slow crawl over time, and that way it doesn't trip any alerts. Then it will target things like you mentioned. It will try and dump your VSS, your volume shadow services. That way you can't recover from a backup. If it goes long enough that it gets through your backup schedule, then you don't have anything to restore from. It's fairly nefarious. They're not good guys. It's unfortunate. So what do we do to try and attach that? Well, if you're talking to us today, chances are you care about the idea of how do you get data resilience with a single copy of data? The answer is you need to kind of separate the intelligence and the performance from that copy of data, right? The traditional way of doing things where I'm going to have 3 full fidelity copies all around the world means that you need to have intelligence around that, right? Well, how do I get that copy and how do I prevent versioning and how do I restore from that and what are the logistics around that and how do I have all those storage arrays to accomplish that? How do I protect those from getting damaged? That's its own set of management. Panzura is a software-defined file services system, but what we're doing is we're taking the intelligence, we're taking the performance, the access, the visibility, and the intelligence, We're taking that into software and we're pushing that to the edge, and that leaves a very cold, scalable, durable, protected core in the middle on object store that's very durable, and that's where we're keeping the single copy of data. Because we're doing it that way, that means we can layer all that protection, all those kind of steps to make sure that data isn't breached, that data is not malleable, right? It can't be changed, and it's immutable, but it's available to everyone. And that way you can really accomplish that disaster recovery. You can get that business continuity. You can get that ransomware protection. You can get the versioning and backup and recovery from that single copy of data. So this is an architecture for us, right? So in the middle, this would be your Azure Blob storage. On the edge, this would be where your performant filers would be, right? So this would run on VMware or Hyper-V, and this would provide the file services. So when a file comes in from one location, we're going to strip the metadata from the file data, and we're going to create the global file log. Now, the file data, this is where we're going to start doing the intelligence to that. We're breaking it into blocks. That way we can track changes at the block level. We're going to make sure that we're encrypting it at this block level before it leaves the edge. And we're going to make sure that we are making sure that it's fully encrypted, fully compressed, fully deduped before we push it up into the object store. Now, when we write to the object store, we do something called a non-destructive write. This is important because this is what gives us our versioning, because now we have every block that's created every version of every file represented in that blob object storage. In addition, this gives us our immutable file system architecture, which is what gives us that ransomware protection, because now you can't corrupt the existing data. You can only add a corrupted version. Now the metadata gets pushed. That metadata is really that roadmap to build every version of every file. Now we're going to take that and bring it in every location. So now everyone has that visibility. Everyone has that performance access into it, even though that golden image of those constituent blocks are in that object storage. So now when a user in, say, London goes to access that file, you'll see I still have that locked in New York. So they get that message, hey, that file's already in use. Do you want to open that and read only or make a local copy? That's good. That's preventing that corruption. That's preventing that version sprawl. Well, we'll just close that file in New York, and now I'll try and open it again. Now, because of this intelligence is built in, I'm going to ask for that file. I'm going to say, hey, I need this version of the file. It says, here's the lock. The most recent version is the one that I just saved 2 seconds ago that hasn't even been sent to the object store. Here are the blocks that have changed that haven't even made it up to Azure yet. And that's how you get immediate data consistency on operation because of that intelligence push to the edge. So now you can have the best of both worlds. You can have that immediate consistency. You can have that fast NAS performance, but you're getting all that DR. You're getting that business continuity. You're getting the backup and recovery and the versioning and that ransomware protection that Azure Blob supplies. So when it comes to ransomware, ransomware really is the most aggressive on the destruction of that data. So that's really the one we're going to hit home. I know it got dark really quickly, but a file comes in. First thing that Panzura does is we take this file and we break it into those immutable blocks, A, B, C, and D. So now when Captain Crypto here tries to make an easy buck, he overwrites that file. So now he thinks he's corrupted the data, but because those blocks are immutable, what he's actually done was he created new immutable blocks, E, F, G, and H. So now when he tries to hold that data ransom, he never had your data. He simply had your pointers within the pointer map within the metadata. So because our snapshots are read only and he had no way to destroy the snapshot pointer map, we simply revert that back. And now this poor disheveled guy has to go and get a real job talking to me. But the rule of three still applies. There's a reason that the rule of three exists. The rule of three states that you need to have 3 copies of the data. And that's because things happen. Hardware fails. Power goes down. You'll lose network connections. Some truck will run into a telephone pole. Meteors probably won't hit your data center. We can probably eliminate that one. But things do happen that do disrupt your access to data, and that's why the rule of three applies. Now, with this solution, that's no longer your problem. That's now Microsoft's problem. And so I'm going to hand this over to Carl, and Carl can explain how we still handle that rule of three.
Excellent. Thanks, Bob. The great thing about cloud storage is there's a lot that you can rely on your cloud storage vendor for. The integrity of the data, the protection of the data from physical equipment and physical location failures or outages are things that are within our purview. That's our responsibility, as long as you've chosen the model to store your data that meets your needs. And there's a good blend of price, performance, and price per resiliency that we offer to our customers. And the great thing is no decision is permanent. And I'll show you this during a demo. You can actually move between these different models that determine how many copies in how many locations we are creating of your data in an efficient, erasure-coded manner. And the fantastic thing about cloud storage that I think goes unsaid oftentimes is when you create a storage account inside of Azure, and you'll see me do this during a quick demo, you never have to say, I want an account that's going to host my data from Panzura Cloud FS that is 100 terabytes in size. And then I have to babysit that and maintain that and capacity plan that as my needs from my multiple sites increases. You create a storage account. That account grows to multiple petabytes automatically as needed on demand without any intervention, and you pay for only what you're using. So if you're one of the lucky few who gets to purge data when a project is completed, you will actually see your bill decrease month over month. Bob, I don't know if that was something that you ever benefited from. I didn't.
Yeah.
I worked in healthcare and the energy industry, and my folks never cleaned up, ever.
That's always
So
the wishful thinking scenario.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of digital pack rats that worked with me, that's for sure. One thing I wanted to highlight as well is we protect the integrity of the data. There's tons of background scrubbing that takes place. We maintain those multiple copies. You can have drive failures, individual racks full of equipment fail, and even data center regions fail if you choose those models that you saw over on the right, and still have your data available. But in addition to the amazing snapshot pointer-based level protection that Panzura implements, we give you protection as well from either accidental or malicious activities that occur around those cloud storage accounts that are beyond the control of the Panzura Cloud FS platform. And I'm going to show you how to do that during a demo. How can you prevent someone from accidentally deleting a storage account that shouldn't be deleted, that holds production data? How can you protect against that admin who just got their pink slip and on the way out the door says, yeah, I'm going to purge these cloud storage containers that host my files and host my directories from Cloud FS? I'm going to show you how to protect against that. And then from an encryption standpoint, we're going to take a look at what we bring to bear as well to add a belt and suspenders approach to the encryption that Panzura places within Cloud FS already. So the great news is we've got additional layers that are part of the core foundational storage services that are really easy to set up, and again, give you that belt and suspenders approach to make sure you are protected end to end, and those bad guys that Captain Crypto can't come and put the hurting on you. So let's take a look at how all of this gets set up. I'm a big show me type of person. I love to see demos. Hopefully this will be something helpful for the folks here. If you haven't seen the Azure portal before, this is where you can manage your environment in addition to our CLI and templates and PowerShell. Of course, there's PowerShell for everything. But in this case, I need to create a storage account that is going to be used by my distributed Panzura Edge appliances. So I choose create, and I'm going to walk through a wizard-based approach to create this account. So for me, what subscription? I'm lucky I have access to a ton of them. You may have one, you may have multiple. A resource group is a concept that allows you to group things together. So if you have a firewall and a storage account and some VMs that are going to access the data in that account, one of the great things that Panzura lets you do is set up Cloud FS in Azure. So if you have virtual desktops or virtual machines running in Azure, you can access that same golden copy within the storage account from a virtualized Panzura device. Really, really cool capabilities. And you can put that all in one resource group. So it's easy to report on it, monitor it, provide access to it, all of that good stuff. I'm going to choose this one that I use for a bunch of other stuff. I have to give it a name that is unique within all of Azure, as this is going to become a DNS name that I can use to access this from all over the world. I need to choose a location, and we have, oh my goodness, at this point we're closing in on 100 regions, and a region contains multiple data centers. So we have a huge global footprint. And then premium is SSD-backed storage. Few of our customers need that. Most are looking for that standard. And especially with Panzura doing that caching on the edge, you really don't need a premium account here. I'm acting as your friend here, trying to save you some money. Don't waste money on something you don't need there. These are those protection levels that we talked about, how many copies and how many different geographical locations. I'm going to choose this one, the lowest cost, and I can change that down the road. And then we're going to go through the rest of our config here, security parameters. Yes. Always secure transfer. That makes sure all traffic traverses over HTTPS. You're not exposing everything as anything as clear text. No, I do not want this publicly accessible. I'm going to grant my Panzura appliances secured access with a key that will make sure that no one can accidentally access the data in there, despite the fact that it's encrypted. You still want to do that. And then I'm not going to do any of the rest of this stuff here. We'll choose our hot tier versus cool. Cool is good if you're putting data in place that's just going to sit there and not be accessed, but it will cost you more to access it. So hot for the majority of your Panzura use cases is the right way to go there. And then finally, from a connectivity standpoint, we'll keep this public for now. I'm going to show you more on that in a second. And we want this to traverse Microsoft's backbone networks, which is going to be a little bit more secure than going over the public internet right from our data center. It gives you an added layer of protection there. And then finally, what I was talking about earlier in terms of protecting against malicious or accidental activities with this storage account itself, you can go ahead and enable snapshot capabilities for the storage account. Now, you need this in addition to Panzura. This is not a replacement for Panzura's capabilities, because what you see here will not be exposed to you as admins or your end users as recoverable files. This is that smoking crater meteor type event scenario where you need to recover and do that in a coordinated fashion with CloudFS to get this data back. But this is not a day-to-day backup and recovery protection scheme. That is Panzura. And these are all the capabilities that I talked about there, with the exception of the locks that I'm going to show you here in a second. You can put names here if you have thousands of resources inside of your Azure subscription. Tags are a great way to do additional grouping and reporting. I'll blow that off at this point. And once we go ahead and look over everything here, yep, this looks great. We're going to go ahead and hit create. And at this point, you notice at no point did I say I want a storage account of X size. It gives me a storage account. It does that auto growth that I talked about. And within 30 seconds, we'll have this available for use. But we don't want to watch the paint dry, even though it is only 30 seconds. I want to show you a few other quick things here, like those networking parameters, those security parameters that I talked about. If you didn't do that up front, you can go in after the fact and make those changes. I can lock down access to just within Azure and exclude external access. I can enable access for my site or range of public IP addresses I own, or my individual site public IP address. There's tons of controls that you can put in place after the fact. And if you did not choose an option to give you the number of copies and number of locations that you wanted up front, even that is something that you can change after the fact. So I can switch an account from 3 copies in one data center to 6 copies across 2, or the other options that we support, 3 copies across 3 in a region. There's tons of different changes that you can make going forward. That means you're not stuck with what you initially choose. You have that flexibility to go back and forth. And then finally, the locking that I mentioned. So I want to make sure no one can delete this account. I enable a delete lock, And now this account cannot be deleted unless I explicitly remove that lock. So there's a couple of extra steps there. These are audited. I can trigger alerts to let me know that this lock has been removed. There's a lot that I can do to, again, add those suspenders to the belt that I'm already wearing and make sure that I have multiple layers of protection in place between Panzura and the mechanisms inside of Azure. For those of you who have a need to protect things other than your file infrastructure, let's say you have SQL servers on premises or Postgres DBs or SAP implementations, whatever the case may be, right? Any application that has structured or unstructured data that lives outside of Panzura, we have a capability now called Immutable Blob storage that works in conjunction with our backup partners like Veeam and Commvault and Rubrik and Veritas, and the list goes on, where you can enable a worm copy, write once, read many, that cannot be deleted, cannot be modified until your expiration date kicks in. So this is a great solution for backup. This is absolutely positively not something that you want to implement with Panzura. This will cause you pain and suffering because you need that file system to have complete control over the life cycle of the files. Do not use this technology for your Panzura deployment. But with your backup vendor, great solution to complement the rest of the data types and applications that you have in your environment and add 2 sets of suspenders to that belt you're wearing.
That's absolutely right. And we see this a lot, especially in our public sector. A lot of our FinServ will use that technology. Worm is incredible. And as you mentioned, a great complement to your unstructured data set that you're using with Panzura. You want to make sure, especially your databases, people want to think that databases are immune to ransomware. They are absolutely not. In fact, they can be the most devastating attacks. And where that structured data isn't a great candidate for Panzura, it is imperative that you use something like that worm protection from Azure to accomplish that. So to recap, you can have resilience, you can have protection from one copy of data, but there are contingencies on that. You need an intelligent way to strip that performance, that intelligence, that visibility, and that availability into the data from the data itself. That way you have more flexibility in where that data is stored. Panzura accomplishes that for you. Then once you've given that flexibility of where that data is stored, Azure gives you that durability you need to make that one copy of data the copy of data that will accomplish all these business needs for you. So bringing those two together is what allows you to really accomplish all of this with that single copy of data. Thank you so much for your time.
This was awesome. It was a ton of fun, and folks, you're always welcome to contact us offline as well. I know many folks get a little gun shy in a public forum asking questions, so we're here for you. I'm available on Twitter at cloud with a K _Carl. Super clever naming of my Twitter account there, but if you're interested in Azure and cloud storage, that's a good account to follow.